Guys, I've been trying to record this chapter for about 5 minutes. And I keep starting, and every time I start, something happens, and I have to start over. So this time, I've decided I'm just going to barrel through, mistakes and all. So here we go. This is your reading for Monday, April the 27th. It is going to be chapters 20, let me make sure I'm telling you the right chapters before I spout that off. Chapters 21 and 22 in our novel Guns for General Washington. I do want to give a special thank you to Harcourt Incorporated. That is the publisher of the book. And they're allowing us to post this online during this remote learning, so that's really sweet of them, so thank you so much. I did want to take a moment and show you the title page. There's a lot of information on here, and I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to stop and really look at it. So here's our title of our book, here's our author, here's our publisher right here, and these are the cities of publication. So this is where they actually go through and have their publishing facilities. So just kind of wanted to show you that. And their publishing offices as well. All right, so I just wanted to show you something different. So let's get started. So guys, we left off and our noble train of artillery was heading back towards Cambridge. So they've gone up and over these mountains, and they are now trying to get from the base of the mountains to where General Washington needs them. So let's see what happens. Chapter 21. On to Westfield. Put my glasses back on. Whoa, my hair got a little wild there. Okay, all right. Let's put my glasses back on. On to Westfield. At dawn, the horses and oxen were hitched up, and the convoy started off. They followed a dry stream bed to a dirt trail. Henry knew from his map that the trail would take them straight to Westfield. So that would be setting right there, guys. For a long while, they moved over hard, frosty ground, coated with snow, a smooth surface for the sled runners. But now the sun began beating down. So what's going to happen, guys? So they're on top of snow, and now the sun's beating down. What happens when you add heat to snow? It's going to get mushy. So what kind of conflict would this be? So they're no longer going over smooth snow, they're going through kind of slushy, wet, sludgy snow. So man versus what? If you said nature, you got it right. Okay, but now the sun began beating down, melting the snow and turning the trail to mud. This made it slow going for the patient animals, who plodded along, dragging their heavy loads. As usual, Colonel Knox fretted about losing time, but even he realized that the weather was something he could not give orders to. Mr. Becker's shoulder was now healed, and he took over the reins of their wagon. J.P. was a little disappointed at losing his job, but Will saw this and invited the boy to ride with him on the big sled. Will's vehicle, hauled by 8 oxen, carried a 24-pounder that the men had nicknamed Old Sow. Young John was thrilled to be riding alongside his friend, and he watched with pleasure the skillful way that Will handled his 4 pair of oxen. So a pair would be 2, so that would mean he had a total of 8. So that's why earlier it said 8, and now they're saying 4, because it's pairs of oxen. To help pass the time, William taught J.P. a lively song called the Derby Ram. No, I'm not going to sing it for you, so don't worry. Which people said was a favorite of General Washington's. J.P. soon learned the words, and as they rode along, he and Will sang together. As I went down to Derby on a market day, I met the biggest ram, sir, that was ever fed on hay. The wool on the ram's back, sir, reached up to the sky. Eagles built their nest there, and I heard the young ones cry. He had 4 feet to walk on, sir. He had 4 feet to stand, and every one of those feet, sir, was covered an acre of land. And it's true, my lads, it's true, my lads. I never was given to lie. If you'd been born in Derby, if you had been in Derby, you would have seen the same as I. Okay, so definitely have some hyperboles going on in that poem or in that song. some exaggerations. By the time the caravan plodded into Westfield, everyone was in a festive mood. Once again, the whole population came out to meet them. A few of the locals had seen cannons before, and they marveled at the giant weapons tied on the carts. They also gave the travelers ale, cider, and all the good food they could eat. At the town inn, Henry and Will relaxed and joined the fun. The brothers smiled at each other happily, suddenly aware that the worst of their ordeal was over. The ale flowed freely, and numerous toasts were offered. "Here's to Colonel Knox," someone shouted. "Here's to good old General Washington," others cried. So something that I wanted to point out to you was the worst of their travels were over. That means everything that's coming forward is going to be a relatively smooth trip. I just felt that that sentence should have been celebrated more. It just seemed like a kind of an understatement. Like it needed this grandiose kind of ending, but it was the reality of things. They got their task accomplished, so maybe it does fit. Here's to the artillery train, here's to the rebel cause, and to blazes with the British. A farmer brought out a fiddle, and someone else brought out a dulcimer. Guys, I'm going to suggest that you look up what a dulcimer is and what a fiddle is, because they're definitely types of instruments, but it might be cool for you to look up what they look like and maybe even what they sound like. They'll sound very different. They played tunes such as the Massachusetts Hop, the Road to Boston, and Will Knox and his knee all better joined in a lively square dance called the quadrille. Will was bursting with pleasure and excitement. Henry was also pleased, but he tried to keep his emotions in check. "It looks right good," he admitted to Will, "but remember, we're not home yet." As the climax to the festivities, Henry treated the townspeople to a demonstration. From their small supply, he filled a powder horn and poured it into the breech of the old sow. Then he put a match to the cannon's touch hole. The gun interrupted in a powerful but harmless boom. Everyone was impressed and cheered loudly. "Thank the Lord," Will said to JP with a grin, "that the British are too far away to hear us." Now, I put a marginal note here. I wrote, but what about spies? Something to think about. Okay, so I want to go back and I want to show you the chapters so that you guys can mark them up. Not a lot to mark up today. Not in this chapter anyway. And then here's the final one. All right, guys, just remember when you get to that chapter, just pause, or that page, just pause, and then you can mark up your pages. Or you can go online and do it. Chapter 22, Partings. The trip from Westfield to Springfield was a short one, but the trail was deep in mud, so the pace of the convoy was slow. Whew. As they drew near Springfield, the happy mood of the travelers changed to one of gloom. The reason was clear to William. Many of the drivers had agreed to stay with the train as far as Springfield. At that point, with the guns safely across the mountains, they were ready to return to their farms and towns in New York State. The men missed their families, and they were needed at home, but they had developed ties of loyalty to the mission, and they found it hard to tear themselves away. I can understand that. It's like if actually I wanted to relate this to a movie that Mrs. Eckert had me watch. If you guys have Disney Plus, they're into the animal movies. You can find one, I think it's called Togo, I think is the name of it. And it's the story of the actual dog that got this medicine. He went on, they're sled dogs, so they're running in the snow. And he is the actual dog who did this huge, massive run to get this medicine to save this town that was actually in kind of like a pandemic of their own. And he couldn't make it for like the last 10 miles. And guys, it's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles. And he couldn't make it the last 10 miles, so they put a different sled dog in its place. And that's the dog that became famous. So the sled dog that became famous is named Balto, but the other one, the one that actually did all the work in this most incredible time and, you know, it's really dangerous, never got the credit. So look it up. It's a really good movie. Really, really, really good. All right, but I'm not going to tell you what happened to the dog, so you're going to have to watch it to find out and why he couldn't make it. You have to read. I have to watch a movie. Okay. Among those due to leave were the Beckers, who faced a long trip back to Glen Falls. They had been part of this venture day and night for over a month, and for JP it was painful to leave. When he said goodbye to William, he had to swallow hard to keep his voice steady. Will also felt sad, but he grinned, reached out, and ruffled JP's hair. "Don't mind you, old friend," he said. "We will meet up again, I promise. We will have a proper visit after we send these redcoats packing." At last, Mr. Becker clucked to the horses, and the empty wagon started off. JP turned around and watched the group standing near the vehicles. He kept watching longingly until a bend in the trail hid the convoy from view. The next morning, the new drivers, fresh oxen, the caravan pushed on through the thick mud. It was a long run to the next stop of the town of Worcester, but they made it at last and rested overnight. Then at daybreak, like so many other daybreaks, Henry roused the men and led the convoy to Farmingham. They were now a mere 20 miles from Cambridge, and it suddenly dawned on Will that the journey was almost over. They really had done the impossible. The young man was elated, but Henry refused to relax. "We're not finished," he said. "It'll only rest when every gun is in place." John Adams, we know this name, John Adams, a member of the Continental Congress, who would later become the second president of the United States, was staying near Farmingham. With his friend, Elbridge Gerry, he hurried to town to inspect the new weapons, and he was thrilled with what he saw. That night, he wrote about it in his diary, which would be a primary source document. The next day, leaving Will in charge, Henry mounted a fast horse and raced to Cambridge to report. Washington and the others greeted him joyfully, and some of the officers apologized for having once doubted him and his foolhardy plan. They showered him with praise and compliments, all of which he shrugged off. "Sirs," he said with a smile, "if anyone deserves credit, it's the drivers, the troopers, and those hard-working animals." Wow, talk about being humble. Here he just did this amazing feat, and he thanks everybody else and not himself. It's pretty awesome. Later at a council meeting, the mood grew serious. At last they had good artillery and a big shipment of powder on its way. But General Howe had also gained in strength. He commanded a huge army of redcoats, and his warships could still destroy Boston. The colonists would have to move very carefully. According to their spies, the British had no idea that the rebels had located heavy cannons. How could they guard this vital secret and keep the enemy in the dark? Now they had real power. But what was the best way to use it? All right, so let me show you those chapters. I should not have closed my book. All right, so here we go. Chapter 22. Go ahead and pause if you need to. If you want to mark up your pages. And remember that this time in this book, we have green is for suspense. It's not motif or theme in this book, it's suspense. Okay, so that's it for today. Short video, and we will see you on Wednesday. All right, guys, peace out. I miss you. Bye.